Imagine standing in a completely silent room.
Okay.
You arrange your body into this perfectly comfortable posture, right? You're just staring at a blank wall.
Right.
And then you just stop moving completely.
Not an inch.
Yeah, exactly. Not an inch. You don't shift your weight. You don't swallow. I mean, you don't even blink.
Which sounds impossible.
It really does. You just stand there until the physical urge to twitch becomes this like absolute screaming agony.
Oh, yeah.
Until your brain, just totally starved of any new sensory input, it actually begins to fabricate its own reality just to have something, anything to process.
Intense.
And the crazy thing is, you aren't doing this as some form of bizarre self-punishment. You are doing this to methodically dismantle your everyday consciousness.
Right, to break it down.
Yeah, to strip away the ego and literally hack the very source code of reality.
It is a profound and, honestly, an almost terrifying level of psychological deconstruction.
Totally.
You are actively starving the part of your brain that needs constant entertainment.
And constant narrative.
Exactly. Constant narrative, constant comfort. Just to see what actually remains when all of that noise finally goes entirely dead.
Which we never do.
No, almost never. Most people spend their entire lives desperately avoiding that silence. But the material we're examining today, well, it actively weaponizes it.
It really does. So welcome to this custom-tailored deep dive designed specifically for you.
We're excited for this one.
We really are. We are bypassing all the dusty, dogmatic mystification that usually surrounds this stuff.
Hollywood version.
Yeah, exactly. The Hollywood stuff. The swirling capes and cryptic Latin chanting, we're throwing all that out. Instead, we are looking at a highly practical, genuinely experimental art of achieving magical trances and altering consciousness.
It's fascinating.
And our entire roadmap for this journey today is drawn from excerpts of Peter J. Carroll's foundational text, Liber Null.
And our mission today isn't to just evaluate supernatural claims in a vacuum,
Right.
Or to try and convince you that, levitation is a real physical thing you can do. The goal here is to dissect the raw mechanics of mind control, of reality manipulation, and personal metamorphosis that are outlined in this source.
Because the practices are intense.
Oh, they require a rigorous, often incredibly grueling psychological commitment.
Yeah.
We basically want to extract the actionable techniques from the material so you can understand exactly how these extreme mental disciplines are theoretically used to unlock hidden human abilities.
So whether you are insanely curious about esoteric systems or you just, want to understand the absolute extremes of human focus and discipline, this material offers a truly mind-bending look at the architecture of consciousness itself.
It really is a blueprint.
It is. Okay, so let's unpack this. Because before we can get into how the rituals, the trances, the actual techniques of altering your mind, we really have to establish the where and the what.
The foundation.
Exactly. We have to look at the metaphysical engine of this whole system.
Because if you just jump straight into the exercises,
they sound like pure madness.
They absolutely do.
Yeah, so we need to understand the theoretical physics of this universe first.
Yeah, it is genuinely the only way this makes sense. If you don't understand the framework of how this specific text defines reality, the practices will just seem like bizarre torture.
Right.
So the source begins by defining the standard human condition, the baseline operating system that you and I use every single day.
And it calls this condition duality.
Duality, yes.
So everything we experience on a day-to-day basis is paired. If you think about how you process the world, we only really understand happiness because we have experienced physery, right?
Exactly.
We understand the concept of heat purely because we know the physical sensation of freezing cold. Good and evil, black and white, being and non-being.
The contrasts.
Right. The text asserts that all phenomena must be paired because our physical senses, and frankly our brains, they're only equipped to perceive differences.
And it goes deeper than just sensory perception.
Yeah.
It is the fundamental nature of the thinking mind. Well, the human brain is essentially a dualistic machine. It survives, it navigates the physical world by constantly splitting absolutely everything it encounters into two distinct categories.
Like safe or dangerous.
Exactly. Safe or dangerous, mine or yours, past or future. Even language itself is entirely dualistic.
Oh, that's a good point.
Right. You literally cannot describe a concept without implicitly referencing its opposite.
You can't have up without down.
Exactly. And this dualistic mind, it's brilliant for survival. It's great for building cities and avoiding predators. But according to the source material, it is also a massive, inescapable prison.
Because it traps us in a constant cycle of reaction. We are always just bouncing between these poles, seeking pleasure, avoiding pain.
Constantly reacting.
Yeah, but, and here's where it gets really interesting. The text claims there is a part of us that is actually singular.
A core piece.
Right, a component of the human architecture that is not split into opposites, and it's called Kia, K-I-A.
Yeah.
And Kia is essentially the elusive I.
The pure basis of consciousness. It's the observer.
But the really tricky part about Kia is that it doesn't actually consist of any fixed qualities that the dualistic mind can easily latch onto.
Right.
It is basically self-awareness without the self, if that makes sense.
That is a crucial distinction.
Yeah?
It really is. Because when most people think of their self, they think of their memories, their personality quirks.
Your job title.
Yeah, their job title, what kind of music they like. Lee Bernal argues that all of those things are just byproducts of the dualistic mind.
They're just labels.
Right, they're accumulations of experiences and categorizations. The Kia, on the other hand, is the silent witness standing behind all of that.
Just watching.
Exactly. It is the formless awareness that is watching the dualistic mind do all of its frantic categorization. But the problem, according to the text, is that for almost all of us, this pure Kia is deeply, hopelessly buried.
It is suffocating under a massive mountain of mental garbage. It is trapped in the dualistic mind, just drowning in the aimless wanderings of our everyday thoughts, our super fragile egos, and our constant, desperate identification with our experiences.
We just mistake the chatter in our heads for who we actually are.
Which means, I mean, if you want to do anything remotely magical or exert any true will upon reality, you have to free the Kia.
You have to get the noise out of the way.
Yeah, you have to shut down the dualistic mind long enough for that singular observer to actually step forward.
But then you have to ask, what is Kia connecting to once it does step forward?
Right, where does it go?
Yeah, if you manage to quiet the mind, what is this singular I actually interacting with?
And that brings us to, honestly, probably the most misunderstood concept in the entire text. Chaos.
Oh, absolutely.
Because when most people hear the word chaos, they just think of a messy bedroom, you know?
Or riot in the streets.
Yeah, a riot or just total entropy and random disorder. But the text redefines it completely.
It does. The source aggressively strips away all the anthropomorphic religious baggage that usually accompanies creation myths.
There's no guy on a cloud.
Right. There is no bearded man in the sky dictating events. Chaos, in this specific framework, is simply the raw underlying thing responsible for the origin and continued action of all events in the universe.
It's the engine.
Exactly. It's the blind, non-human force that just constantly spawns complexity out of sheer nothingness. It's the inexplicable engine that caused life to spontaneously evolve out of cosmic dust in the first place.
It is the ultimate creative potential, like right before it takes on any specific form.
Yes.
And here's the major metaphysical claim of the whole book. Kia, that elusive, formless I inside of you, is actually a tiny, concentrated fragment of this universal chaos.
That's the huge leap.
It is. You are literally carrying a microscopic spark of the universal engine inside your own consciousness.
Which sets up the underlying theory of magic in this entire system.
How does it work?
Well, when you strip away the dualistic mind, when you finally stop categorizing, worrying, remembering, and projecting, your Kia is temporarily liberated.
It's free.
Right. And because Kia is fundamentally a fragment of chaos, it naturally seeks to become one with the universal chaos again.
Like a magnet.
Exactly. You are essentially taking your personal, isolated fragment of the life force and plugging it directly back into the main universal power grid.
And when that connection is made, a person can theoretically extend their will into the universe to cause actual physical or circumstantial change.
That's the theory.
But, we have to ask, how does a thought, even a completely pure thought powered by Kia, actually manipulate the physical world?
Right. There has to be a mechanism.
Yeah, there has to be a medium. You can't just throw a thought at a solid brick wall and expect the wall to fall over.
And the text provides that medium. Between the formless, infinite potential of chaos and the gross, solid, heavy matter of our physical world, there lies a transitional layer.
Yeah.
Just like between your pure Kia and your physical, fleshy brain, there is a bridge. The text calls this intermediary layer the aether.
The etheric reality. And I have to say, this concept absolutely fascinated me in the source material
Very compelling.
because it feels almost like esoteric philosophy accidentally bumping into modern physics.
The deep logic here really is incredibly compelling. The aether is described as this realm of half-formed, tenuous, probabilistic substance.
It's not solid yet.
Exactly. It doesn't consist of hard matter. It consists of all the possibilities that chaos throws out, which have not yet solidified into fixed reality.
Okay, right.
It is the shifting backdrop out of which real events, coincidences, and thoughts eventually materialize into our actual physical plane.
So think of it like a massive backstage holding area in a theater, right?
I love this analogy.
All the actors, all the props, all the potential lighting cues and the scripts, they are just milling around in the dark backstage. Yeah, waiting. They don't have a precise location on the main stage yet. They don't have mass or energy in the spotlight. They are just pure, unstructured potential waiting for a cue.
That's perfect.
And the text explicitly compares this etheric state to the discoveries of quantum indeterminacy in physics.
Which is wild, because that backstage analogy perfectly captures the mechanics at play here. In quantum mechanics, before a particle is observed, it exists in a state of probability, right?
The wave function.
Right, a wave function that could theoretically be anywhere or do anything. It only collapses into a fixed physical state when it actually interacts with an observer.
And Lee Bernal is basically saying that's what the aether is.
Exactly. It is essentially arguing that the aether is an entire realm of uncollapsed wave functions. Because the ether is only partially evolved into existence, because it hasn't stepped out onto the physical stage yet, it is highly mutable.
It can be bent.
It can be bent, it can be manipulated.
And so the text argues that by manipulating this highly mutable aether with focused thought and the liberated power of Kia, you can actually will highly unlikely coincidences into existence.
That's the magic.
Right. What the layperson calls magic or a miracle is actually just the deliberate manipulation of this etheric backstage area right before the event steps out onto the physical stage.
You're just changing the script.
You are literally rearranging the props in the dark so that when the lights come up, reality looks exactly the way you want it to look.
But, and this is a massive build, but rearranging those props requires a level of access that normal human consciousness simply does not have.
You can't just walk in there?
No, you can't just casually stroll into the etheric backstage area while your dualistic brain is chattering away about, what you're going to have for lunch.
Or worrying about an email.
Exactly. The ether responds to pure intent. If your intent is mixed with anxiety or distraction or ego, you will only manifest chaos in the negative sense.
Just disorder and confusion. Which completely explains why the mind control techniques we are about to discuss are so unbelievably extreme.
They have to be.
You have to bypass the rigid, dualistic brain entirely to gain access to that backstage area. You basically have to build an entirely new architecture for your own consciousness.
And that requires a truly agonizing dismantling of your everyday habits. It requires absolute uncompromising mind control.
Which leads us to the architect's blueprint of this whole system.
Where the work actually begins.
Right. How do you actually train your Kia to break free of the dualistic mind? It starts with, honestly, the most mundane yet punishingly strict practice imaginable.
You start by keeping records.
The text introduces what it calls the magician's most essential and powerful tool, the magical diary.
Now, if you were picturing like a cute leather-bound journal where you write down your feelings about the universe or sketch little mystical doodles.
Toss that out.
Yeah, throw that image away completely. The magical diary is not a receptacle for emotional catharsis.
It's not a diary in that sense.
Not at all. It is a strict empirical ledger of reality testing.
The physical requirements laid out in the text are highly specific, right?
Oh, very. It must be a physical book, and it must be large enough to allow a full, dedicated page for each single day.
And the most intimidating rule.
No page should ever be left blank.
Never. You are recording the exact time of your practice, the duration down to the minute, the degree of success of any ritual you undertake, and the environmental factors.
The weather, your mood.
Yeah, like was it raining? Were you tired? Did you drink coffee beforehand? It acts as a scientific reference book to track your data, sure, but more importantly, it acts as a goad to further effort.
Because the psychology of the diary is deeply confrontational.
How so?
Well, think about it. If you skip a day of practice, you don't just ignore it and move on. You are forced to look at a massive, empty white page in your book.
It's just sitting there.
Right. That blank page is a physical manifestation of your failure of will. It literally stares back at you, proving that your dualistic mind, your laziness, your excuses, won that day.
It holds you ruthlessly accountable.
Absolutely. Wow.
And what exactly are you recording on those pages? I mean, what are you doing? You're recording the results of your daily rituals.
The progression.
Right.
Yeah.
The text outlines this brutal progression of physical and mental exercises meant to build your focus until your mind can enter a genuine trance-like condition.
And it doesn't start with complex visualizations either.
No, it starts with the raw physical body.
The very first discipline is motionlessness.
Okay, walk us through that.
You are instructed to arrange your body in any comfortable position. Sitting, lying down, it honestly doesn't matter. And then you simply try to remain entirely, perfectly still.
And when the text says still, it doesn't mean just like relaxing on the couch while watching TV.
Oh, no.
It means absolute physiological paralysis. No blinking, if you can help it. No moving your tongue inside your mouth.
No shifting your weight.
No twitching a finger to scratch an itch. You just passively observe yourself existing in space.
And the source makes a really brilliant observation here. What initially feels like a highly comfortable, relaxed position will, within just a few minutes, become sheer agony.
Because your brain freaks out.
Yes, the body will scream to move. You will suddenly become hyper-aware of a tiny itch on your nose or the weight of your own saliva compelling you to swallow.
It's maddening.
It is. The dualistic mind actually uses physical discomfort as a tool to break your focus and regain control.
It's like a toddler throwing a tantrum. But you must persist. The text instructs you to aim for 5 minutes, minimum, pushing toward 15 minutes of unbroken stillness.
Unbroken.
Unbroken. And you cannot move to the next exercise until you master 15 minutes of absolute motionlessness.
Which could take months.
That alone could take months of daily failure. I mean, I can't even sit at my desk for 5 minutes without bouncing my leg or checking my phone. The level of physical discipline required here is practically Olympic.
But once you finally conquer the body, you move to the breath.
Right, the second stage.
The next stage is breathing. You maintain that agonizing motionlessness we just talked about, but now you deliberately take control of your autonomic nervous system.
Okay.
You slow and deepen your breath, using the entire absolute capacity of your lungs.
Mm-hmm.
But, and this is key without introducing any muscular strain.
Right, you're not gasping.
Exactly. You are holding your lungs completely empty for a set duration, then completely full, gradually lengthening the cycle.
And your mind is not allowed to wander to how hard this is.
No.
Your mind must direct its complete, undivided attention to the physical sensation of the breath. And you are supposed to do this for up to 30 minutes.
30 minutes of observing absolutely nothing but the expansion and contraction of your own chest.
While remaining perfectly paralyzed.
It is an incredible test of endurance. But, the text states something that is almost disheartening at this point.
What's that?
It says that motionlessness and breathing are merely preparatory warm-ups.
Oh, man.
Yeah. They are just stretching exercises for the most difficult step of all, which is not thinking.
Not thinking. Oh, the attempt to completely silence the mind. I mean, I have tried this in basic meditation, and it honestly feels impossible.
The source material is brutally honest about this specific phase. It warns that when you attempt to withdraw the mind from any thoughts that arise, you will inevitably reveal the mind to be a, quote, raging tempest of uncontrollable activity.
A raging tempest. That is the perfect description.
It really is.
You just sit there and suddenly you are thinking about like a weird conversation you had in 2015,
Or worrying about whether you left the stove on.
Exactly. Or a random song lyric gets stuck on a loop. It's like turning off the lights in a room only to realize the room is absolutely swarming with insects.
That's a creepy but very accurate way to put it.
I'd argue it is actually worse than the physical pain of motionlessness, because you are confronted with how little control you actually have over your own brain.
You are facing the dualistic mind in its purest, most chaotic form.
Right.
It demands the greatest determination to win even a few fleeting seconds of absolute mental silence.
Just a few seconds.
But achieving those few seconds is considered a massive triumph in the architecture of this system.
Because you're starving it.
Exactly. You are essentially starving the dualistic mind of its constant need for chatter. You are proving to the Kia that it can actually exist without the constant deafening noise of the ego.
And once you can quiet the mind, even just a little bit, you move into the actual magical trances.
This is the next level.
This is where you stop trying to think of nothing and instead you focus your entire terrifyingly sharpened attention on a single phenomenon.
Right.
But here is a massive, incredibly surprising rule from the text that totally threw me off when I read it.
Oh, the object selection.
Yes. When you select an object to focus on for a magical trance, it must be completely meaningless.
Completely. It cannot have any spiritual, egotistical, intellectual, emotional, or useful significance whatsoever.
Which is wild. So if you are doing this because you want a promotion at work, you cannot focus on the idea of money.
No,
If you are lonely, you cannot focus on the image of a person you desire.
definitely not.
You can't even focus on a traditional spiritual deity or, like, a religious icon. My immediate reaction was, well, why?
It seems counterintuitive.
It really does. If the whole point of magic is to achieve a specific goal, why are you forced to concentrate on something you don't care about at all?
The psychological reasoning provided by Lee Bernal here is genuinely brilliant. The text explains that if you attempt to focus intensely on a deeply held desire, your effort is immediately short-circuited by lust of result.
Lust of result, that phrase is so evocative.
Isn't it? Because the moment you focus on something you desperately want, your ego gets involved.
Immediately.
Fear of failure creeps in. Anxiety about whether the magic is actually working destroys your concentration. The dualistic mind immediately creates a massive narrative around the object.
Right. If you focus on a pile of money, your brain starts thinking about bills.
Exactly. About your boss, about your inadequate savings account. The pure Kia gets instantly buried under a mountain of neuroses.
It's too much baggage.
And furthermore, the text points out that the reciprocal desire not to achieve the desire naturally arises from our dual nature.
Wait, what do you mean?
Well, if you really want success, a part of you instantly dreads failure. You can't have one without the other.
Oh, wow. It's like insomnia, right? When you desperately need to fall asleep because you have an early meeting, the sheer desire to sleep is exactly what keeps you awake.
That's a perfect analogy.
The lust of result ruins the whole process. So instead of focusing on what you actually want, you practice these trances on the entirely mundane.
You practice object concentration.
Right. You pick a meaningless mark on a blank wall or a distant, nondescript star, and you just stare at it.
For hours.
For hours, without letting your eye distort it, without letting your mind find something else to think about.
Or you practice sound concentration, where you mentally repeat meaningless, nonsensical syllables over and over.
Like a mantra, but with no meaning.
Exactly. The text suggests things like zaza sounds that have absolutely no linguistic translation. You just repeat them in your head until the sound loops automatically, until it becomes literally the only thing in your consciousness.
Even continuing while you sleep, it says.
Yes.
Or image concentration.
Mm-hmm.
Holding a simple, completely uninteresting shape, like a gray triangle, in your mind's eye.
Just holding it there.
Holding it there without letting it waver, without letting it change color, without letting it spin. Just a static triangle filling your entire mental screen.
And the source notes that achieving this requires a, quote, fanatical and morbid determination.
And I have to be honest here, I have to push back a little on the text.
Fair enough.
I understand the concept of starving the ego, but staring at a mark on a wall for 3 hours, mentally repeating a nonsense word until you hallucinate it in your dreams.
It sounds awful.
It sounds like absolute torture. It sounds like the kind of sensory deprivation they use to break prisoners, you know? Where is the grand reality-bending magic in just being agonizingly, painfully bored?
It feels like torture because it is torture, but specifically for the dualistic mind.
Okay, explain that.
You have to remember how the brain actually operates. The dualistic mind survives on entertainment. It survives on narrative, on bouncing frantically between past regrets and future anxieties.
It feeds on stimulation.
Exactly. By forcing it to focus on a completely meaningless gray triangle for 2 unbroken hours, you are literally starving it to death. You are shutting down the ego's life support system.
You are intentionally inducing the ultimate boredom to break the machine.
Exactly. When the dualistic mind finally goes quiet, not out of peaceful enlightenment, mind you, but from sheer exhaustion and a total lack of sensory stimulation, it collapses.
It just gives up.
Yes. And in that void, the singular Kia can finally step forward, unburdened. The boredom isn't some unfortunate side effect of the practice. The boredom is the weapon itself.
Wow, okay, that frames it entirely differently. You are using boredom and fanatical discipline as a psychological weapon against your own ego. So, you've trained your mind to hold this unwavering focus. Your Kia is stepping forward. You are finally ready to touch the aether.
You are.
But now, according to the text, you are in an incredibly dangerous, highly vulnerable state. Before you start trying to write code into the etheric backstage of the universe, you have to build a safety net.
Yes, and this brings us to a really critical inflection point in the text, which is the concept of banishing rituals.
Right.
In the architecture of this esoteric system, you cannot simply leap from mental discipline to actual magical operations. You must construct a psychological shield.
Because if you don't, you run the risk of basically breaking your own mind. Why is banishing so crucial at this specific stage?
The source outlines 3 fundamental reasons, and they are all rooted in the extreme vulnerability of the trance state.
Okay, what's the first?
First, on a practical level, a well-constructed banishing ritual acts as a psychological trigger. It prepares the mind rapidly for magical concentration.
Like a shortcut.
Sort of. Once established, it acts like a switch you can flip to instantly enter that hard-won, silent trance state without having to sit perfectly still for an hour first every single time.
Got it. And the second?
Second, it protects the practitioner from what the text calls hostile occult, influences stray energies or thoughts floating in the aether.
But the third reason seems to be the most vital from a pure psychological perspective.
It absolutely is. The third reason is to resist obsession.
Which makes sense. I mean, consider what you are actually doing to yourself. You are training your mind to focus with this terrifying, unnatural intensity. You are breaking down the normal barriers of everyday consciousness.
Right.
If you then start working with powerful symbols, deep desires, or intense dream experiences in that hyper-focused state, those things can really easily start leaking into your normal waking consciousness.
Without a banishing ritual, you blur the line between the etheric reality and your mundane reality.
Which is dangerous.
Extremely. You could easily drive yourself into a state of paranoia, schizophrenia, or absolute delusion. The banishing ritual is essentially the firewall that rigidly separates the magical mindset from everyday life.
It sets boundaries.
Yes. It tells the brain, we are entering the workspace now. And more importantly, it says, we are leaving the workspace now. Go back to normal.
I love that firewall analogy. It's like a scientist building a mental clean room before working with a highly infectious virus.
Exactly.
If you are about to manipulate the raw, probabilistic code of the ether, you absolutely cannot have malware running in the background. Stray anxieties, unresolved neuroses, or obsessive thoughts will just corrupt the entire system and manifest chaotic results.
And the text provides a highly precise, step-by-step construction for this firewall. It is not just a mental exercise either. It requires physical engagement.
Right, you need tools.
It begins with the weapon.
Okay, Liber Null lists traditional tools like a sword, a dagger, a wand, or a large ring. But it emphasizes something fascinating here. You shouldn't just go onto the internet and buy a mass-produced dagger.
No, definitely not.
It says that hand-forging your own instrument, painstakingly crafting it yourself, or discovering it in some strange, synchronous way in the real world makes it wildly more effective.
And the logic there is deeply rooted in psychology. The effort, the time, or the mystery surrounding the object deeply impresses the subconscious mind.
It gives it weight.
Right. The weapon itself isn't inherently magical. It doesn't shoot sparks. It serves as a dense physical anchor for your psychological intent.
It makes it real to your brain.
Exactly.
Okay.
When you hold it, your brain immediately recognizes the weight of the work you put into it. And once you have this weapon in hand, you construct the barrier.
So you use the weapon to physically trace and strongly visualize a three-dimensional barrier around yourself.
Yeah.
You don't just lazily draw a circle on the floor either. You must use that intense, trained imagination to build a sphere or a cue of humming energy entirely enclosing your body in your mind's eye.
Next comes the focus.
Which is internal.
Yes. While maintaining the visualization of the 3D barrier, you concentrate your will on an internal visualized image, like a brilliant ball of light glowing inside your head, or an imaginary third eye opening in the center of your forehead.
So you are anchoring your internal energy while holding the external shield.
Exactly. Followed immediately by the reinforcement.
This is where the sigils come in.
Right. You use the weapon to literally draw power symbols, often referred to as sigils, which are really just concentrated symbols representing a specific intent or power onto your visualized barrier.
So the text mentions traditional symbols like the 5-pointed star, the pentagram, or the esoteric 8-pointed star of chaos.
You trace these shapes in the air with the weapon,
Tearing them into the space around you, searing them into your mental visualization of the shield so they act as structural supports.
and the culmination of this intense physical and mental exertion is the void.
The grand finale.
Yes. It's a brief, intense, utterly determined effort to stop thinking entirely. You hold the visualization of the barrier, the glowing symbols, the internal focus, and then you forcefully aspire to the infinite void.
You silence everything.
You seal the clean room.
What I find so striking about this is how neurologically robust the entire process actually is.
Oh, it really is.
Think about what is happening in the brain. You are engaging the physical kinesthetic body by gripping the weapon and performing grand gestures, right?
Right.
You are engaging the spatial and mathematical imagination by constructing the 3D barrier. You are firing the visual cortex by forcing the glowing power symbols to appear. And finally, you are engaging the highest executive function of the prefrontal cortex with that final violent push into the mental void.
It is a complete systemic grounding mechanism.
It uses the whole brain.
Exactly. It overwhelms the dualistic mind's capacity to wander by giving every single part of the brain a highly specific, intense task to perform simultaneously.
So there's no room for stray thoughts.
None. It is designed to snap a wandering, vulnerable mind back into absolute rigid control. If you feel an obsession taking hold or a trance lingering too long, performing this ritual shocks the nervous system back to a baseline of sterile control.
So we have the foundation built. You have your magical diary holding you accountable.
Right.
Your mind is violently disciplined through agonizing motionlessness, breath control, and the sheer torture of focusing on meaningless objects just to starve the ego.
You've done the work.
Your banishing shield is up, your firewall is totally secure, you are standing safely inside the psychological clean room.
Ready to begin?
Now, how do you actually cross the final threshold? How do you reach through the aether and impose your will?
You must achieve what the text calls gnosis.
Gnosis. The
Yeah.
ultimate, absolute, altered state of consciousness.
Yes.
The text describes it using several terms from different traditions, right? Like no mind, samadhi, or one-pointedness.
All pointing to the same state.
But practically, it is the exact hyper-specific moment where the dualistic mind is entirely bypassed, beliefs can be successfully implanted into the ether, and your life force is induced to actually manifest your intent.
It is the explosive moment that Kia makes direct contact with universal chaos.
The spark connects.
Exactly. And the text reveals that there are two radically different, almost diametrically opposed ways to force the brain into this state: the inhibitory mode and the excitatory mode.
I love how the text breaks this down. It essentially offers you the quiet path or the loud path. Let's start by looking at the inhibitory mode, the quiet path.
So the inhibitory mode is the progressive, absolute silencing of the mind until only a single object of concentration, your magical intent, remains in your consciousness.
Okay.
This is the extreme final extension of the motionlessness and not thinking exercises we discussed earlier. But the techniques used to achieve it here go far, far beyond just sitting still.
The techniques are severe. I mean, fasting for days to weaken the body's physical grounding.
Extreme sleeplessness.
Yeah, pushing the body to total physical exhaustion. Sensory deprivation, like locking yourself in a pitch black, silent room for extended periods.
Or simply gazing motionless at a natural phenomenon.
Right, like the reflection in a dark pool of water or a single candle flame, until the peripheral vision totally collapses and everything else in the universe just falls away.
And the most dramatic and intense example given in the text is the death posture.
Okay, I have to stop here because reading about the death posture genuinely unsettled me.
It is definitely meant to be unsettling. The death posture is a literal physical feint at death, designed to achieve and utter biological negation of thoughts.
It's extreme.
The text describes it as forcefully jamming back your breath, blocking your eyes and ears, and holding the breath until the sheer physiological panic of near unconsciousness involuntarily forces you to break the posture.
Let's really unpack the reality of that. You are physically blocking your own airways and sensory organs until your brain literally begins to panic because it thinks it is dying. You are inducing a state of deep hypoxia. That is not just extreme mental discipline. That is medically terrifying. It sounds like you are just traumatizing your own nervous system.
It sounds like it, yeah.
How does suffocating yourself lead to a magical state of gnosis?
The logic, while extreme, is neurologically consistent within this framework.
How so?
Well, when the body is deprived of oxygen to the point of near unconsciousness, the brain enters a strict primal survival mode. It immediately shuts down all non-essential functions.
Right, it doesn't care about your ego.
Exactly. It stops worrying about your ego, your memories, your anxieties about the future. The dualistic mind is violently powered down to conserve energy for basic survival.
So it's forced into silence.
In that split second of ultimate physiological surrender, right before you gasp for air, the mind is completely, utterly blank. It is forced into a state of one-pointedness by sheer biological necessity.
You are basically forcing a hard system reboot by draining the battery down to exactly 0%.
That's a great way to describe it.
And in the fraction of a second before the screen goes black, you implant your magical intent.
Yes.
Another variation of the death posture it mentions is standing on tiptoe, arms locked behind your back, neck stretched to the absolute limit, holding the body in maximum agonism tension until you literally collapse from exhaustion.
Also terrifying.
And again, in the exact moment your muscles fail and you hit the floor, your mind is wiped completely blank.
It is the ultimate expression of the inhibitory path.
Right.
But then, the text eagerly contrasts this with the exact opposite approach.
The excitatory style.
Allowed path.
And this is where things get really wild. Instead of silencing the mind and shutting down the body, you raise the mind to a massive screaming pitch of excitement while desperately maintaining your concentration on your objective.
Yeah, overload the system instead of draining it.
Exactly. The techniques here rely on total sensory and emotional overload. Wild, unstructured, exhausting dancing, ceaseless, deafening drumming and chanting that literally shakes the physical body.
Forced overbreathing or hyperventilation to flood the brain with oxygen.
Which induces dizziness and altered states.
Right. It also delves into intense emotional arousal. The text specifically mentions tapping into primal emotions like fear, profound anger, or absolute horror.
Horror, why?
Because when you are genuinely terrified or enraged, those emotions are so loud, so consuming, that they rapidly paralyze the peripheral mind.
Oh, that makes sense.
You cannot worry about paying your taxes if you are in a state of absolute primal terror.
Right. You're not thinking about your grocery list when you're terrified. And the text pushes it even further, mentioning flagellation and the endurance of pain, noting that surrendering entirely to intense physical pain eventually pushes the brain past the threshold of suffering into a kind of strange ecstasy and one-pointedness.
Yes.
Or intense sexual excitation, pushing the physical body to its absolute neurological climax, holding the intent in mind at the very peak of arousal.
You're just throwing every possible stimulus at the brain until it simply cannot process the data anymore.
Which raises a massive, seemingly contradictory question, honestly. And this leads to what I think is the text's most fascinating neurological insight.
The convergence.
Right. How can extreme sensory deprivation like suffocating yourself in total silence and extreme sensory overload like frantic dancing and pain achieve the exact same magical result?
This is what the source calls the grand convergence. It states explicitly that both paths, if pushed to their absolute limits, end up in the exact same place.
They merge.
Yes. Whether you use the upright inhibitory method or the averse excitatory method, if you push the stimulation or the profound lack of stimulation far enough, it eventually forces a mechanism in the brain called reflex inhibition.
Reflex inhibition, like the circuit breaker tripping.
Precisely. Strong, overwhelming inhibition and strong, overwhelming excitation both eventually destroy the dualistic mind's ability to process normal reality.
They just break it.
They both paralyze everything in your consciousness except the central object of your focus. The brain simply cannot maintain the illusion of the ego under that much extreme stress.
Think about this in a real-world, modern context just to ground it.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever been inside a perfectly silent, pitch black, sensory deprivation float tank?
Oh yeah, the isolation tanks.
Right. The water is exactly body temperature, so you actually lose the sensation of your own skin. There is no sound. There is no light. After an hour in that tank, your mind initially fights it, but eventually it just blanks out.
It gives up.
Yeah, you hit a state of pure, expansive flow where time literally ceases to exist.
That is a perfect modern analog for the inhibitory path.
Now, contrast that with the exact opposite environment. Imagine you are in the middle of a deafening, chaotic, heavy metal concert, right in the center of a mosh pit.
Totally different vibe.
Exactly. Strobing lights are flashing in your eyes. The bass is physically vibrating your ribs. People are slamming into you from all sides. You are sweating, screaming. Adrenaline is flooding your system.
Just absolute chaos.
And suddenly, at the very peak of the chaos, your brain just overloads. The noise becomes a singular drone, and you hit that exact same state of pure, blank, thoughtless flow.
That is the excitatory path in action.
It's the exact same place.
The peak of deafening excitation and the deepest cave of absolute quiescence are physiologically and magically the exact same place.
That is mind-blowing.
The brain responds to both extremes by shutting down the dualistic mind and opening the door to gnosis.
But, and this is important, The source issues a very specific structural warning about how you utilize these two paths. You have to be careful.
Well, there's a critical warning. You can use these methods sequentially in your practices over time, but you must never use them simultaneously.
You cannot mix the paths.
Never. If you try to mix sensory deprivation with sensory overload in the same operation, you court disaster.
It won't work.
You cannot be fasting for 3 days and heavily sleep deprived, and then attempt wild, ecstatic drumming and overbreathing.
Right.
If you mix the upright and averse paths at the exact same moment, you do not achieve one-pointedness. The reflex inhibition fails to trigger cleanly, and instead you shatter the mind into a state of profound confusion, nausea, and deep psychological depression.
You basically break the brain in a bad way.
You are sending entirely contradictory signals to the nervous system. You have to choose your vehicle to reach gnosis, the silence or the scream, and commit to it fully until the reflex inhibition actually kicks in.
It's just incredible, the sheer mechanical precision, the architectural rigor of it all. We set out at the beginning of this deep dive to explore the raw mechanics of mind control and reality manipulation, and man, we have traversed a massive, daunting landscape.
We really have. We've looked at the metaphysical foundation, understanding our reality as a mutable aether suspended between the raw, formless potential of chaos and our rigid dualistic minds.
All waiting to be manipulated by the liberated singular Kia.
Exactly. We've examined the architect's blueprint for escaping that dualistic mind.
Building that terrifying mental discipline through the unyielding accountability of the magical diary.
The agonizing physical stillness of the body, the mastery of breath.
And the sheer psychological torture of focusing on meaningless objects just to starve the ego of its narrative.
We discussed the absolute non-negotiable necessity of constructing a psychological shield, too.
The banishing firewall.
Yes, engaging the body, the imagination, and the will to protect the mind from its own expanding power, and really to prevent those terrifying obsessions from leaking into daily life.
And finally, we explored the gateway itself, pushing the human brain to its absolute physiological and psychological limits via extreme inhibitory quiet or extreme excitatory noise.
Forcing the mind to collapse into that ultimate state of gnosis.
Where the ether can actually be touched and where the wave functions of reality can be collapsed according to your will.
And if we bring this all back down to earth, back to you listening to this deep dive right now.
Right, why does this matter to the listener?
Exactly. Even if you never intend to forge a magical sword in a fire, or cast a sigil of intent into the aether, or attempt to bend reality to your whims, the underlying principles we've discussed today are profoundly, universally relevant.
How so? What is the practical takeaway for someone who just wants to live their life?
Think about the era we currently live in. We exist in an age of constant, relentless, monetized distraction.
Oh, absolutely.
The dualistic mind is currently being fed a never-ending buffet of notifications, anxieties, news cycles, social media narratives, and just digital noise.
We are bombarded.
We are being actively trained to never experience a moment of silence.
It is the ultimate anti-gnosis. We are basically being trained to keep our Kia permanently buried.
But the sheer psychological discipline outlined in Liber Null, the ability to learn to hold one single thought and violently, uncompromisingly reject all others, that is an immense liberating power in the modern world.
Just to have focus.
Just the act of asserting control over your own attention, of refusing to let your mind be a raging tempest dictated by algorithms and external forces, is a profound act of personal metamorphosis.
It's taking back the remote control. It's deciding what plays on the screen of your own consciousness rather than just letting the world dictate it to you. Which brings us to one final, truly mind-bending concept pulled from the very end of the source material. A thought I really want to leave you with to demonstrate just how far this philosophy extends.
This part is wild.
The text discusses the concept of reincarnation, but, it doesn't discuss it in the standard passive sense where you just accrue karma and hope for a good life next time around.
No, it frames reincarnation as the ultimate, final ritual of an advanced master. It actually refers to it as integral reincarnation.
The idea presented is that an adept who has built up enough etheric power, who has achieved perfect gnosis and mental discipline, can actually carry their spirit over, whole and intact with all their memories and will, into a new body at the exact moment of physical death.
They don't lose themselves in the void.
No, but here is the massive catch. How do you ensure that in your next life, when you are born as a tiny blank slate infant in a totally different era, you eventually find your way back to your magical past?
Because you wouldn't remember it first.
Right. The text suggests a highly specific technique for this, known as the white rite of reincarnation. It posits that at the exact fleeting moment of death, as the physical body shuts down, the adept uses their ultimate discipline to strongly, fiercely visualize an etheric marker.
A highly specific symbol.
Or a sigil of their own design, yeah. They burn this image into the fabric of the aether as they die.
The theory being that this specific marker permanently attaches to their spirit.
Exactly. And later, decades or even centuries down the line, in their new physical existence, when their infant or childhood self accidentally stumbles upon that specific symbol or shape in the physical world.
It triggers a deep subconscious recognition.
Yes, a profound, inexplicable affinity that pulls them back toward the esoteric knowledge they possessed in their past life.
It's essentially a deliberate failsafe, a mechanism to wake yourself up in the next life when you have forgotten who you actually are.
It's like leaving a beacon for yourself in the dark. So I want to leave you with a thought-provoking question to mull over as you go about your day, as you look at the world around you.
This is a fun one.
If you were going to leave an etheric marker for your next incarnation to find, what symbol would you choose? What specific image represents the absolute, unchanging core of who you are?
And perhaps even more intriguingly, if we actually follow the logic of the text, what if the current obsessions you have in this life,
Wait, like what?
like the strange symbols, the specific geometric shapes, the highly specific historical eras or concepts you've always been inexplicably drawn to since you were a child for absolutely no logical reason?
Oh, wow.
What if they are just etheric markers you left for yourself in a past life?
What if you've already been leaving yourself breadcrumbs in the ether, and you are just now beginning to follow them? We spend so much time looking outward, trying to figure out how to change the world. But the deeper you go into the mechanics of consciousness, into the silence of the Kia and the raw power of chaos, the more you realize the universe isn't something happening to you. If you can quiet the raging tempest of your mind long enough to see it, you are the architect. You just have to remember how to build.